There's a sentence that the United States government has never said to its own citizens on Israeli soil in 77 years of the American-Israeli relationship.
Not during the 1973 Yom Kippur War, not during the Gulf War Scud attacks, not during any Hezbollah rocket campaign,
not during any Hamas offensive. The sentence appeared this week on the official website of the United States Embassy in Tel Aviv. In the event of an emergency, the embassy may not be able to provide assistance. Read that again. The most powerful government on earth. The closest ally Israel has ever had.
a country that has deployed carrier strike groups, funded Iron Dome, and written blank security guarantees to the Jewish state for 3 generations, telling its own citizens on Israeli soil, "We cannot help you." That sentence did not appear because of a staffing shortage. It did not appear because of a bureaucratic update to standard travel advisory language. It appeared because something has changed in the threat assessment for Israeli territory that the American government cannot manage, cannot mitigate, and cannot protect its citizens from.
And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what that threat is, because what Iran has activated in the last 72 hours is not a response to American military pressure.
It is a retaliation architecture that has been engineered, prepositioned, and waiting for authorization since the morning after Operation Midnight Hammer struck Fordo and Natanz in June 2025. The authorization has been given, and the American embassy in Tel Aviv just told you it cannot stand between you and what comes next. Start with the exact language the embassy used because diplomatic language has a grammar of its own, and every word in that sentence was chosen with surgical precision by people who understood exactly what it communicated. The embassy security alert was issued at 6:23 in the morning local time. It advised American citizens to shelter in place, to identify the nearest protected space, to have emergency supplies prepared for a minimum of 72 hours.
72 hours, not 24, not 48, 72 hours of self-sufficiency, the number that emergency planners use when they assess that the initial phase of an attack will overwhelm response infrastructure.
The alert described the threat environment as rapidly evolving and said that consular services were suspended until further notice.
Suspended, not reduced, not operating on limited hours, suspended. Consular services suspended means the American government has assessed that the physical safety of its own embassy personnel cannot be guaranteed for the duration of the threat period. When an embassy cannot guarantee its own staff safety, it cannot guarantee its citizens' safety. The embassy is not hiding that fact. It is stating it explicitly. That explicit statement is the most honest communication the American government has made to its citizens in this entire crisis.
Here's what Iran activated in the 72 hours before that statement appeared. The activation did not begin with missiles.
It began with a communication.
Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei issued a formal order to the Quds Force, though with the external operations arm of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, authorizing what Iranian military doctrine calls a graduated escalation response. Graduated escalation is not a single retaliation, it is a sequence. Wave 1 targets military infrastructure. Wave 2 targets economic infrastructure. Wave 3 targets what Iranian doctrine describes as decision-making capacity.
Decision-making capacity in Iranian military targeting language means that people and institutions whose continued function allows the adversary to sustain and direct its military operations. An American embassy in Tel Aviv is by that definition a decision-making capacity asset.
The suspension of consular services is the American response to being classified as a target in Iranian escalation doctrine.
The embassy did not say that, but that is what the suspension means. The proxy activation that the New York Times reported as chatter in intercepted communications 3 weeks ago is no longer chatter. It is operations. Hezbollah launched a salvo of 47 rockets and anti-tank missiles into northern Israel in a single 90-minute window on Tuesday evening.
47 in 90 minutes, the highest single-session launch rate since the 2006 Lebanon War. Iron Dome intercepted the majority.
But Iron Dome interception rates against saturation attacks follow a specific mathematical reality that Israeli air defense planners have been documenting since 2021.
Each Iron Dome battery carries 20 Tamir interceptors per launcher.
Each battery has 3 to 4 launchers, 60 to 80 interceptors per battery against a 47 rocket salvo distributed across multiple approach vectors simultaneously.
The batteries in northern Israel engaged the salvo. The intercept rate was reported by the Israel Defense Forces at approximately 80%.
80% sounds like success against 47 rockets. It means 9 rockets impacted, 9 rockets in 90 minutes in populated areas of northern Israel.
That is the floor of what Hezbollah can produce on a single evening with partial activation. Full activation is a different number entirely.
The full activation number is what the American Embassy's 72-hour shelter-in-place advisory is actually communicating.
Hezbollah's confirmed rocket and missile arsenal as assessed by Israeli intelligence and reported by the Washington Institute for Near East Policy stands at approximately 150,000 projectiles.
150,000 against the 47 launched Tuesday. The 47 were a signal, a calibration, a demonstration of the mechanism without the consequences of the mechanism.
The same demonstration Iran conducted in the Strait of Hormuz on February 17th, when gunboats practiced closure procedures for a few hours before standing down.
Practice the mechanism, demonstrate capability, create the uncertainty that changes the adversary's planning assumptions.
Hezbollah practiced 47 rockets on Tuesday. The American Embassy issued its cannot help advisory on Wednesday.
The sequence is not coincidental. Kata'ib Hezbollah and Iraq did not limit itself to practice.
3 separate rocket attacks struck the perimeter of Al-Assad Air Base in western Iraq between Monday and Wednesday of this week.
Al-Assad is home to 200 American service members, the same base that Iranian missiles struck directly in January 2020 following the killing of commander Qasem Soleimani.
The attack that caused traumatic brain injuries in over 100 American personnel, the current attacks did not penetrate the base perimeter.
They were in direct fire, rockets launched from mobile platforms beyond the wire impacting the outer security zone.
No American casualties were reported, but the operational significance of 3 attacks in 72 hours against the same base is not about casualties.
It is about tempo. 3 attacks in 72 hours means the launch teams are not withdrawing after each attack and relocating.
They are maintaining positions and sustaining fire. Sustained fire from maintained positions is not harassment.
It is suppression. Suppression operations are designed to constrain the movement and operational tempo of the force inside the perimeter.
Al-Assad's operational tempo is being suppressed. The Houthis reactivated on Tuesday morning.
The announcement came through their official military spokesperson, Yahya Saree, who has made every significant Houthi military declaration since the campaign against Red Sea shipping began in October
2023. Saree announced the resumption of operations against what he described as Israeli-linked vessels in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden.
The ceasefire that had reduced Red Sea attacks since January, itself the product of quiet diplomatic pressure through Amani intermediaries, is over.
Container shipping companies that had been cautiously returning to Red Sea routing after the ceasefire period immediately received updated war risk advisories from their insurers. Maersk, the world's second-largest container shipping company, issued a fleet-wide routing instruction within 4 hours of their announcement.
All Maersk vessels to avoid Red Sea routing until further notice, one announcement from a Houthi spokesperson.
4 hours, the world's second-largest container shipping company reroutes its entire global fleet.
That is what Iranian proxy retaliation architecture looks like in its economic dimension. No missiles needed, just the credible announcement that missiles are coming. Now, let me show you the retaliation architecture in its complete form, because the mainstream coverage of the last 72 hours has been treating each element.
The Hezbollah rockets, the Qatar attacks on Al-Assad, the Houthi, Red Sea resumption, the Iranian embassy communication as separate stories.
They are not separate stories.
They are sequential activations of a single coordinated architecture that Iran has been building and maintaining since the asymmetric warfare doctrine was formalized by IRG Commander Qasem
Soleimani before his death. The architecture has 5 components. Each component operates independently.
Each component can be activated, escalated, or stood down without affecting the others.
This modularity is the strategic sophistication that most Western analysis of Iranian military capability misses.
Iran does not have a war plan. Iran has a war architecture. Plans break on contact with the enemy. Architectures adapt.
Component 1 is the Lebanese front. Hezbollah's 150-000 projectile arsenal is not a random accumulation.
It is a tiered inventory designed for sequential employment across multiple phases of escalation. Tier 1 is unguided rockets, Kuches, and Grads.
High volume, low precision, designed to saturate Iron Dome batteries and consume interceptor magazines.
Tier 2 is anti-tank guided missiles, Cornets, and medic systems, precision weapons that can penetrate armored vehicles and fortified positions at ranges exceeding 4 km.
Tier 3 is precision-guided munitions, Iranian-supplied Fate 110 and Zell's ballistic missiles with circular error probability measured in meters rather than hundreds of meters.
Tier 4 is what Israeli intelligence describes as game-changing weapons, long-range precision missiles capable of striking Tel Aviv, Haifa, and the Diona nuclear facility from Lebanese territory.
Tuesday's 47 rocket salvo was Tier 1 employment. Full Hezbollah activation means all 4 tiers employed simultaneously.
Iron Dome handles Tier 1 with 80% efficiency against moderate salvos. David's Sling handles Tier 3.
A3 handles ballistic trajectories. No Israeli air defense system is designed to handle all 4 tiers simultaneously at full employment rates.
The American Embassy's 72-hour shelter advisory was issued with knowledge of what full Hezbollah employment looks like against Tel Aviv's air defense coverage.
Component 2 is the Iraqi front. The 5-0 militia fighters who crossed from southern Iraq into Iran in January have not returned.
CNN, Iraq security sources confirmed their presence inside Iran as of last week. Inside Iran means they are not conducting operations from Iraqi territory.
They are inside Iranian command structures, receiving equipment, receiving targeting packages, receiving authorization timelines.
When they return to Iraq, they return as a fully equipped, fully authorized strike force rather than a militia maintaining ambiguous deniability.
3 attacks on Al-Assad this week were not conducted by those 5-0 fighters. Those attacks were conducted by the elements of Kata'ib Hezbollah that remained in Iraq.
The elements that remained are the persistent harassment capability. The 5-0 inside Iran are the surge capability.
2 different forces, 2 different operational timelines, 2 different target sets. Surge capability returns when the authorization architecture determines that Phase 2 of graduated escalation has been reached.
The determination is made in Tehran, not in Baghdad. Component 3 is the Yemen front.
The Houthis demonstrated during their 2023-2024 Red Sea campaign that a relatively small force with Iranian-supplied missiles and drones could impose $200 billion in global shipping disruption. Not through military victory, through the insurance mechanism.
Every ship rerouted around the Cape of Good Hope instead of through the Red Sea adds approximately 14 days of transit time and $1 million in additional fuel and operating costs.
The Red Sea carries approximately 15% of global container trade in normal conditions. Resumption of Houthi operations means 15% of global container trade faces the routing calculation again. That 15% includes the electronics, consumer goods, and manufactured products moving from Asian factories to European consumers.
Routing costs transfer to prices. Prices transfer to consumers. Consumers vote. The Houthis do not need to sink a single ship to impose this cost.
They need Yahisari to hold one press conference. He held it Tuesday. Component 4 is the direct Iranian missile capability.
Iran's ballistic missile arsenal is the largest in the Middle East, estimated by the Defense Intelligence Agency March 2025 report at over 30 ballistic missiles of various ranges.
Shahab-3 and its derivatives can reach Tel Aviv from Iranian territory, range approximately 2000 km.
The Fate 3, 113, and Zulfiqar precision-guided ballistic missiles have demonstrated multiple operational deployments against Kurdish positions in Iraq, against Israeli-linked facilities in Syria.
A circular error probability of approximately 10m against a specific building in a specific city 2000 km away.
Iran used this capability in the June 2025 retaliation against Al-Assad Air Base in Qatar. More than a dozen ballistic missiles struck the base.
Qatar's missile defense prevented mass casualties.
The American Embassy's 72-hour advisory was issued with knowledge of what a direct Iranian ballistic missile salvo against Tel Aviv looks like against Israel's current missile defense coverage. A3 and David Sling provide layered defense against a salvo of 200 missiles on multiple approach vectors simultaneously.
The intercept mathematics produce a different result than the dozen missiles that struck Al-Assad. Component 5 is the Global Operations Network.
This is the component that most coverage underweights because it is the least visible in satellite imagery and flight tracker data.
After the June 2025 Operation Midnight, Hammer Strikes, German and Danish authorities uncovered an Iranian-linked plot targeting Jewish institutions in Germany.
Israel issued a formal warning about possible Iranian attacks in the United Arab Emirates. American officials issued a terrorism advisory warning about potential Iranian plots on American soil.
Those post-midnight Hammer activations were the response to a strike Iran had characterized as limited, one it had chosen to answer at a level below its full capacity. Current activation: 47 Hezbollah rockets, 3 Kata'ib attacks on Al-Assad Houth, Red Sea resumption. Embassy security suspension is not a response to strikes that have already landed. It is a response to the word forever. To 50 additional American fighter jets in 24 hours, to 2 carrier strike groups, to be 2 bombers being prepared to move at White Man.
If this is the pre-strike activation, the post-strike activation is calibrated against a completely different threshold.
The New York Times reported that Iran might order proxies to conduct terrorist attacks globally should Trump order large-scale attacks against the regime.
And large-scale attacks are what the current force posture is configured to execute. The Global Operations Network is not currently activated at large-scale response levels.
It is activated at pre-strike signaling levels.
The difference between those two levels is the distance between what happened Tuesday and what the American Embassy in Tel Aviv is telling its citizens to prepare for.
The Iron Dome mathematics deserve their own section because the mainstream coverage of Iron Dome presents it as a binary.
It works or it doesn't. The operational reality is more specific and more alarming. Iron Dome was designed to intercept short-range rockets and artillery shells at ranges of 4 to 70 km.
It achieves interception rates of approximately 90% against single-vector moderate volume attacks and controlled testing.
In operational conditions against real salvos with electronic countermeasures, the rate has been assessed at 80 to 85%.
Against saturation attacks, simultaneous salvos from multiple vectors exceeding battery reload capacity, the rate degrades.
The degradation is not linear, it is mathematical. Each battery has finite interceptors per reload cycle.
Reload takes time. Simultaneous multi-vector attacks exploit the reload window. Hezbollah's doctrine specifically accounts for this mathematic. Tier 1 rockets are fired at high volume from multiple vectors simultaneously to saturate Iron Dome and consume interceptors.
Tier 2 and Tier 3 weapons followed during the reload window. This is not a theoretical attack sequence.
This is the sequence Hezbollah has been training for since the 2006 war. The 47 rockets Tuesday were not fired randomly.
They were fired from 3 separate vectors simultaneously. 3 vectors, 3 batteries engaged, 3 reload cycles initiated.
That was practice. The American citizens of the embassy cannot help number approximately 160,000. That is the State Department's registered American citizen population in Israel. 160,000 Americans on Israeli soil holding American passports, having been told by their government to identify their nearest shelter, prepare 72 hours of supplies, and understand that consular
assistance is suspended. This is not an advisory issue to citizens in a country where unrest is possible.
This is an advisory issue to citizens in a country where the American government has assessed that the threat environment has exceeded its capacity to manage.
The distinction is legally and operationally significant. Standard travel advisories levels 1 through 3 indicate varying degrees of caution while maintaining embassy operational capacity.
Level 4, do not travel, indicates that American government resources cannot protect American citizens, but the embassy remains operationally capable of providing consular services.
The suspension of consular services goes beyond Level 4. It means the embassy has assessed that even its own physical infrastructure may not remain safe for the duration of the threat. 160 zeros. 0 Americans received that assessment in an email that arrived before 7 in the morning.
Israel's response to the Hezbollah salvo was immediate and disproportionate in the specific sense that Israeli military doctrine uses that word.
Disproportionate does not mean excessive in Israeli military doctrine. It means calibrated to impose costs that exceed the costs the adversary imposed.
The IDF struck 23 Hezbollah launch sites in southern Lebanon within 40 minutes of the last rocket impact.
40 minutes, that response time means the targeting packages were pre-built and the strike authorization was pre-delegated.
Pre-delegated authorization means the IDF did not call a cabinet meeting before striking.
The authority to respond to rocket attacks with airstrikes against documented launch sites had already been granted to field commanders.
This is the operational posture of a military that has assessed the current threat environment as exceeding the tempo at which normal authorization chains can function. When authorization is pre-delegated, responses happen faster than political communication, faster than diplomatic signaling, faster than anyone who wants to de-escalate can intervene.
The Netanyahu-Rubio meeting on February 28th took on a different character after Tuesday's Hezbollah salvo than it would have had without it.